So I go all the way down to like page 16 and I see the less restrictive diet. And I'm like, less restrictive. So I look below it and there's one that's more restrictive. And I'm like, listen, you don't know how desperate I am right now. Like, not only have I been in misery for a decade plus, but now they're telling me I could die. If you told me to stand on my head and drink vinegar through my nose 3 times a day, I would do that with a smile on my face. Like, whatever diet is, yeah, I don't care what the diet is. I will do it, and sign me up. So I go down here and look at the more restrictive diet, and I kid you not, this paper, it showed there was a couple of exotic fruits that I'd never heard of on there and a couple of exotic veggies, but everything else was just like animal protein, like meat and fish and eggs and some dairy.
Welcome to Vitality Made Simple. The following production is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you need medical advice, call your doctor. Now, let's go to Vitality Made Simple.
Welcome to Vitality Made Simple. This is the podcast that equips you to feel better, look better, and to enjoy better relationships. And it's with joy in my heart that I welcome Jason Barrett today. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, Jason is someone that I actually know. We both live in Greater Oklahoma City. He is a board-certified pharmacist. He owns 2 pharmacies. He is a husband, a father, active in his community, and every single person, without doubt, that I've known who also knows Jason respond with, "Oh my gosh, what a great guy. He's amazing." So you all get to experience some of his amazingness today. And I thank Jason for joining us, and I thank you for joining Jason and I. So your story is fascinating. You, from my perspective, were born on the sunny side of the mountain, but a lot of people born on the sunny side of the mountain have some dark clouds that can hit. So tell us about the major dark cloud in your life.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for that very kind and generous intro. You're too kind. But yes, you're right. Essentially, I'm from small town Oklahoma. I'm a farm boy, was raised, and eventually went to pharmacy school. And really, one of the things that intrigued me to do that is my younger sister. She's 6 years younger than me, and when she was 6 years old, I was probably about 11 or 12 at the time. She got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I got to watch all that go down. And I mean, it was just crazy, because we had to. Nobody knew what was going on for a few days. She was extremely lethargic and drinking all kinds of water and having to go to the bathroom and just couldn't even hardly get up, And finally, my parents take her to the hospital and they diagnosed her with type 1 diabetes. Her blood sugar's like 800, and I got to watch on a daily basis insulin kind of change her life, and that's what kind of intrigued me. It gave her life back. She was able to do that. And I'm thinking, okay, like that. It intrigued me at a young age. When I got older, it just like math, chemistry. Plus, my dad's a cattle rancher, so we had to use medication. We had to save our cattle if they got sick or whatever. And so I got to see a lot of this going on at a younger age. And so that's why I went and became a pharmacist. I wanted to help sick people get better, So I go become a pharmacist. I'm rocking along, all my upbringing. I was very active. I was into sports. I was athletic. I loved to hunt. I loved to fish. I loved to just be a boy. You know what I mean? And go to farm. Yeah. And so I go to pharmacy school. Everything's great. Graduate, get married. I'm healthy as a horse. And it was probably about 2 years into my career as a pharmacist. All of a sudden, I start kind of getting these weird symptoms. And at first I was because I was kind of raised with the mentality, just tough it out, walk it off, be a man, whatever. And so I did that. But it wasn't getting better. It wasn't getting better. And I probably let it go for too long, and by the time I finally sought out some doctors at this point, when I finally go in, they check me for certain things and they're like, your labs look clean. You look fine. Your thyroid's a little bit off. So here's some thyroid medication. And anyway, the funny thing is one of my major symptoms ended up being, I started having some dental pain. So I go to the dentist and I get that treated. And when the numbness wore off, I think it was just a feeling like a cavity. Clearly, there was something like it was a high tooth, and it wasn't landing properly. And so I called back. I'm like, "Hey, something's wrong," And they said, "Okay, we'll get you back in, probably 2 or 3 days." And over that time, I mean, like, I'm just sitting here every time my teeth touch, that one tooth is just, and it starts to become painful. Well, anyway, I ended up and I believe now I know that my lifestyle back then, and I'll go more into this a little bit later on. I was living a very inflammatory lifestyle, I guess I should say, because instead of me being that outdoorsy, athletic, guy I was now living in the big city down in Fort Worth. I was very, it's a pretty stressful occupation. It can be to be a pharmacist, to be honest with you. There's a lot of pressure on you, especially as a new pharmacist.
Yeah.
My diet was terrible. My sleep schedule was erratic. I wasn't working out like I used to. I was just powering through it. And all of that was manifesting in like a very inflammatory body, And so as soon as something messed up, essentially it was just going to get worse. And that's what happened. It ended up turning into full-blown TMJ, which is terrible. I don't have to tell you how terrible it is. I don't wish that upon anybody. I dealt with that for several years, and I ended up having to go through quite an extensive therapy. And all the while I'm continuing, it's just like every day I wake up, I'm either feeling worse, I'm chronically fatigued, I'm swollen, my mood is terrible, I'm irritable, I don't have much patience or resilience for stressful situations, and all of a sudden I start getting even more symptoms while I'm dealing with the TMJ. So finally I started getting like numbness and tingling and stuff in my hands and feet. So my doctor referred me to a neurologist. I go in, they run a whole battery of tests. They say, "Hey, like, you got neurologic symptoms, but it's not neurologic in nature. You're strong as a horse. You're not showing any weakness or anything like that. So there's nothing we can do for you. We're going to refer you to rheumatology." Well, this is where the real circus began for me. And I mean, I at this point, I was pretty desperate because I was just, I mean, the floor was falling out from under me. It was just getting worse and worse. And so I started going to the rheumatologist. They start running all these tests. And that was the frustrating part, is a lot of these tests would come back. They say, "You're fine. You're clean. You don't have a problem," when literally you can look and you got physical symptoms. You're swollen, And I mean, at the height of it, I had symptoms literally head to toe. I had psoriatic lesions on the back of my scalp and on my arms. I had rheumatoid fingers on several digits. I had TMJ. I had cervical crazy pain in my neck, all up and down my spine, way down at the base of my SI joint. I had sacroiliitis. I had bilateral ankle swelling. I couldn't sleep hardly at all. Couldn't get any restorative sleep because of the pain in my neck. It would just, every 15 minutes you wake up. So you're never getting that REM or that deep sleep that you really need for your body to detox and restore itself. And so it was just like a vicious cycle. I was like, every day I'd wake up thinking it can't get worse. And then it would get worse. I'd wake up the next day and I've got this new symptom, or it's just, something's, and I'm not getting any answers. And so we go through the whole, basically, pharmacy, and I knew this as a pharmacist, of anti-inflammatory medications. They start off with like steroids, and then they go into your NSAIDs, some of the more mild ones, and then they get some very powerful ones that, they got a lot of side effects and you can't use them for very long and all that. Then we get into your DMARDs and like methotrexate and stuff like that. And I eventually go through all these. I'm still getting worse. This is probably 6-7 years into this thing. I cannot get rid of these symptoms. I'm still working full time, still powering through it, but I am absolutely dying, And anyway, finally, he's like, "Well, it's time for the big guns." I said, "Big guns? What are the big guns?" He said, "Well, we're going to hit you. We're going to start you on biologic. We're going to start you on Embrel," which is, I got to pause here and talk about that one just because I know that there's a lot of people who have to resort to this, but you got to know, I knew what this was as soon as he told me what it was, and they're very, very powerful immunosuppressive drugs. They go in and, some of the other drugs like steroids and NSAIDs and these other ones, they go in and kind of modulate part of the immune system to where it'll, it won't really dampen your immune system, but it'll just affect one branch of it to where it'll kind of decrease the inflammation. But these biologics, they go in and turn the volume down on the entire thing. I mean, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, they're powerful. Yes, they'll decrease the inflammation, but simultaneously, they're making you more susceptible to any sort of infectious disease, whether that be a spider bite that turns into a staph infection or the common cold or the flu or whatever. And what happens is when your immune system needs to go fight, it can't. It's hampered down, and so it can turn any minor infection into a serious, and I mean, it could turn into sepsis. It could end up being fatal. It's happened, and these are risks. The other big risk is, your immune system on a daily basis. All of us, there will be a rogue cancerous cell that'll pop up in your system, and when your immune system is working optimally, it can identify it, it can flag it, it can target it, and it can eliminate it, and essentially you're back to being cancer-free. Does it every day. People don't realize that, but that is very much a part of everyday life for your immune system. Well, when you are intentionally holding your immune system back from being able to send the cavalry and do that job, you increase your risk for several types of cancer. And I mean, they tell you that as soon as you get on the medication, you can read the literature, it's right there. And so in the back of your head, you're kind of like, okay, this does help, but I'm increasing my risk for infections and cancer. And then the other thing is let's say it works and you're feeling better, and then all of a sudden you get the cold or you get the flu or you get any sort of infection. You have to stop the medication. It'll take, a week or so to get out of your system. Then you'll start to battle the infection itself, but your inflammation will go through the roof again. So now you're suffering on this side. And so anyway, I did this, and I will say, when I first started it, it was the most powerful thing, and I was being optimistic. I was, hopeful that it would work, and then what I didn't realize is that even though they do work and they are the most powerful option, they don't work forever. These are antibodies that are going in and working as basically as a drug, but your immune system's still doing its job. It's identifying them as foreign, and it makes antibodies against those antibodies, and so it basically decreases the effectiveness of this. And as soon as they do, well, they switch you to a new biologic and a new biologic. And I was on at least 6 or 8 of those over the course of a couple of years. And finally, I'm still not getting better. And I'm like, listen, please just refer me to the Mayo Clinic. I've got to get some answers. I'm hopeful that maybe they'll do something deeper or find the root cause or anything, shed some light on something because I'm trying everything and nothing's working here, And so anyway, I go all the way up there. I'm a lab rat again, poked, prodded, tested, images, scans, everything. And at the end of the week, it was a little disheartening, but it was eye-opening for me as well. I'm sitting in the room, and the doctor's dictating into the mic. It was the rheumatologist that was over me, and he goes, I overheard him say this. I kind of wish he wouldn't have said it in front of me, but he did. He goes, I'm at a disadvantage because this patient comes to me with a prior diagnosis of ankylosing spondylitis. And I almost came out of the chair on this, because it's like, what do you mean? You couldn't have told me you're at a disadvantage before I drove all the way up here and took time and money and all this to come up here. And then basically from that, since he was at a disadvantage, he found that I had sacroiliitis, the inflammation on my SI joint. And he said, we're going to stick with this diagnosis. And I'm thinking, you're the Mayo Clinic. Why can't I just come in and you don't care what somebody else said I have? I come in as a blank slate. You come to your own conclusion. We'll see if they match. If they do match, that's beneficial to me. If they don't match, that's also beneficial to me. I need to know, if you have a difference of opinion, but that's what I left with. So on the drive back, I'm talking to my wife, and I was just like, well, I mean, at least he didn't say it wasn't that, so I guess I'm just going to stick with it. Well, fast forward another year or two, I continue to degrade. I continue to get worse and worse. I'm trying, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't just the medications I was trying. I was trying supplements. I was trying different regimens. I tried a whole bunch of different diets and different therapies, and no lasting relief. And so anyway, I get back, and it's a couple years later, and I'm just seeing my regular primary care physician at this point, and she was only giving me Flonase for allergies. And so I said, at the end of it, she goes, hey, is there anything else I can do for you? And I just kind of jokingly said, if you can get rid of this pain in my neck, this is my chief complaint, this pain right here at the back in my neck, right at the base of my skull. I said, I'll buy you 12 steak dinners right now, whatever you want. And I said, and listen, I don't want pain medicine. I don't want pain pills. I'm a pharmacist. I've got personal reasons. I want something that's actually going to get to the root cause and get rid of this pain without pills. I don't want that. And she goes, well, let's do some imaging. And I'm like, I've been doing imaging for a decade. And every time I do, they say it's clean. She said, let's just do it again. I said, okay, got nothing to lose. Let's do it. This was where it was a little bit different. So she calls me the next day, or a couple days later, I'm at work. And it was a number I didn't recognize. It was actually her personal cell phone. She was calling me. And so I answered it, hello. And she told me, I was like, oh, are you calling me from like your phone? She said, yeah, I wanted to get in touch with you pretty quickly. I said, what's up? And she goes, well, I'm not trying to scare you, but we got back your imaging, and I'm not a radiologist, but even I can look at this image, and I can see that at C1 and C2, those two vertebrae, you have significant erosion. These are the words she used, and I'm just like, what? Like, what is that? What causes that? How? And she was like, that's the thing. I have no idea I've never seen this before. She said, but it's very concerning to me. She said, because just like she said, those two vertebrae are becoming so thin and brittle that they could fracture quite easily if you took a hit to the head at all. She said, so for that reason, I need you to, be safe. No contact sports, no rough housing. Try not to get rear-ended in your car, And
Well,
I'm like, and she
for
goes,
our listeners, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for our listeners, Jason has 3 boys, and he's a very involved father. And I can just imagine that you're out playing with him all the time and,
yeah.
living life to the fullest despite the pain. How old were you at this point?
At this point, I was probably about 32, 33, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Had 3 boys at home, all under the age of 10. Yeah. Well, her next sentence is what really got my attention. She goes, listen, the reason it's a big deal is because since those could fracture quite easily, it's just like with any spinal injury, it depends on how high up the spine. It affects everything below it, So depending on if you took a fracture on the spine, you could end up being a paraplegic, you could end up being a quadriplegic. And if it's high enough up, if it's your neck, then you could die. And she goes, here's the thing. You're at C1 and C2. Those are the 2 highest vertebrae. She said, C3 controls respiration. And I'm like, are you saying what I think you're saying right now? And she's like, I'm saying yes, you heard me correctly. And I'm like, oh my God. And she goes, I've already referred you to a neurosurgeon. You need to get up there as soon as possible. And again, no, don't take any chances. I don't want, So just what you just said, the first thing that comes to mind, I've got a wife at home. I've got 3 young boys. I'm the provider for the family at this point because she's raising our kids, because they're all younger at this point. And I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. How could it have gotten this bad with me being the most compliant patient, taking these medications, doing everything these doctors are telling me to do, going all the way to the Mayo Clinic. I'm doing everything right. And despite all of that, they're telling me I could die now. And so at this point, I call that my rock bottom. I got very desperate at that point. And at this point, I started to consider things that I just rejected before. And that's essentially what drove me to start seeking out through a series of colleague interventions. I had a buddy of mine. He said, hey, there's a doctor I think you should go see that has really helped some people with some issues kind of like yours that we're not getting answers. And then when I looked into it, he was an MD, but he was also well-versed in integrative and functional medicine, which quite a bit about that. And I didn't know much about it at this point. I mean, I had heard of it, but I didn't really know exactly what it was. I didn't realize it was very root causal and holistic, and it was actually going to do what I wanted. If I would have known that 10 years prior, I would have gone there first,
But now we're telling the world, Jason.
Exactly. Well, hey, long story short, I went and saw him, told him the same story I just told you. And he did all the normal lab work that any other doctor would do, but he did a couple of extra ones. One of them was a food sensitivity panel, a very extensive one. And that shed so much light on what was really what was adding fuel to the fire of the inflammation in my body, and that was where I found my answer. I mean, that was where I got my life back, to be honest with you. So
Praise God. It's so exciting. Your enthusiasm at telling people when I first met you and you told me this story, I just thought, I know that your misery is going to be a ministry to help people know they can find root cause and they can feel good. They don't have to be in fear. They don't have to be in pain. So keep going from here because it just gets better, folks.
Absolutely. So essentially, what I found out from this extensive food sensitivity panel, which is a blood test, I got it back. And I mean, it took a couple of months. I kind of had forgotten about it. And then I get this message from him, and he's just like, oh my God, dude, like you've got so many food sensitivities, allergies, whatever you want to call it. And so I pull up this report. I'm thinking it's going to be like a 1-pager. This is like a 17-page report that breaks it down so many different foods, and then not only that, it actually breaks it down into the 3 categories that you can be sensitive, which is IgE, IgG, and C3d, gives a numerical number to let you know how sensitive you are in each column, and it gives a color coding, basically like a stoplight. Red, you cannot eat this food. Yellow, probably ought to take it away and maybe try to bring it back and see if it's problematic. And then green means you can eat it all day long. And basically he goes, oh my God, like I can't believe how many foods you are allergic or sensitive to. I would recommend starting with the less restrictive diet. So I go all the way down to like page 16 and I see the less restrictive diet. And I'm like, less restrictive. So I look below it and there's one that's more restrictive. And I'm like, listen, you don't know how desperate I am right now. Like, not only have I been in misery for a decade plus, but now they're telling me I could die. If you told me to stand on my head and drink vinegar through my nose 3 times a day, I would do that with a smile on my face. Like, whatever diet is, yeah, I don't care what the diet is. I will do it, and sign me up. So I go down here and look at the more restrictive diet, and I kid you not, this paper, it showed there was a couple of exotic fruits that I'd never heard of on there and a couple of exotic veggies, but everything else was just like animal protein, like meat and fish and eggs and some dairy. And when I go up and I look at the list above, I'm thinking, wait. Like, what did I eat for lunch? Yes, like literally the day before I got this report. And I thought, because I was overweight, I was inflamed, I was trying to be healthy. I was very desperate again. So my wife had brought me, I remember what I had for lunch the day before. And for lunch, I had a salad that had lettuce, it had spinach, it had some avocado, it had walnuts, it had, I think, some tomatoes, a couple other things, some olive oil, and then it had some grilled salmon on there. And I go find each item on this report, and I'm thinking, okay, that had to have been healthy. I mean, how do you get healthier than that? Kid you not, the only thing that was okay on my okay list was the salmon. I'm not kidding. They said it said I was sensitive to lettuce. Lettuce doesn't even have anything in it. How can you be sensitive to it? So I would have never figured this out. I would have never figured this out had it not been for this. And so anyway, I'm going home and I'm thinking, okay, I've heard, I immediately think of it. I'd heard of the carnivore diet, but I thought it was the craziest thing I ever heard. I thought it was preposterous, because of what you hear and what we're taught in school and everything. I thought red meat was inflammatory. I thought saturated fat was going to clog all my arteries. I thought the lack of fiber was going to cause, chronic constipation, and I was going to have gout, and I was going to have all these problems from this. But once this report said this, I'm like, listen, I got nothing to lose. I literally have nothing to lose and only stuff to gain if this diet works. So, and I'd already tried a whole bunch of other diets at this point. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to try for 30 days. I'm going to see what happens. And so I did. I went carnivore, and I'm not kidding you. Within the first 10 days of doing this diet, I felt the inflammation, like I could feel, because you can just wake up, and it's properly named. Whoever figured out that the name of that is inflammation, the root word of that is flame. You are on fire. You can feel it in your body, head to toe. I felt it going down like at the source within the first 10 days in the most powerful way more powerful than even on those biologics. And I couldn't believe it. I was in total disbelief. I told my wife, I said, listen, I don't know if this is just a fluke deal. I said, but if this thing keeps going half as well as if it's just going these first 10 days, ain't no way I'm stopping this diet in 30 days. There's no way. And sure enough, we get to day 30, I'm killing it, So I did another 30. And I did another 30, and then another 90, and then another 180. And before I know it, I've been on this thing for a year. And you got to understand, I was at the level of desperation that even when I was tempted with like holidays, birthdays, special occasions or whatever, and some of those foods that I loved would come back, would show up, I would still go, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stick to the diet because this is what has helped me. And remarkably, I after being on that diet for about that time frame, I ended up completely changing my physique because I was able to rest. I was in a better mood. I wanted to work out. It wasn't like, oh, I need to go work out. It was like, I want to go work out. Like this, I actually feel good. I want to go work out. I was able to recover, and so I was able to put on some muscle, and I think that revved my metabolism, and I ended up losing 50 to 60 pounds over the course of that year. Got my whole life back. I didn't tell the rheumatologist, but after, probably close to about that time, 12 months or so, I got off every single anti-inflammatory medication that I was prescribed because I just wanted to do a little test run and see. And sure enough, I kept going because I wanted to make sure I did not need the medicine before I officially fired my rheumatologist. But probably 6 months to a year later, I fully fired him. And to this day, I don't even take a baby aspirin for inflammation.
This is a pharmacist, folks.
Yeah.
Jason, one thing you said to me the first time we met was nothing tastes better than good health.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the Jason Barrett quote that I tell so many people now. It's a world famous quote because you've lived that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And really the way that that quote dawned on me was after I'd been on the diet for some time, I kind of wanted to test bringing some of what I knew to be problematic foods. I thought, oh, I've been off of it. Maybe my gut has healed and maybe I can now tolerate some of these foods that I couldn't when I was super inflamed. Unfortunately, even to this day, this has been almost 6 years later, when I bring back some of those foods that I absolutely love, and I ate them for 20 some odd years and had no problem. That's why it's so hard to even know that they could be problematic, is that I did it for so long and it never caused a single issue. But
Well, it did. You didn't know it. I mean,
exactly.
you didn't feel sick after you ate it, Ross.
100%. Yeah, and that's why they're kind of invisible because you're not thinking of them as likely culprits. But anyway, if I bring it back, some of those old symptoms try to rear their ugly head. I can feel them coming back. I'm never going to let them come all the way back, And so after I did that probably a couple dozen times, it finally dawned on me, and I go, listen, this 5 minutes of pleasure to eat this food is not worth 3 days of torture afterwards. And so eventually I just said, you know what? Nothing. That donut, that cake, that ice cream, that pizza, whatever it is, nothing tastes better than good health. Nothing does. And so that's my motto. I mean, that's how it's easy for me to stay on this diet because it's what's given me my health back, and there's nothing more powerful than that.
Oh, your story is so powerful. Now, in your diagnostic process, did you actually get diagnosed with the HLA-B27 gene that is for ankylosing spondylitis? I think I'm saying it correctly.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of times that's the diagnostic factor, right? In some patients that I've seen, and ironically, or diametrically opposed to what you're saying, these people are told this is a genetic disease. There's nothing you can do about it. Just take the medicine. You're going to decline. Plan on that. I mean, it's devastating.
Oh, yeah.
And in the patients that I've seen, Jason, there's always this whole component of inflammation in the gut, with the gut defined as, starting at the mouth, north to south. So speak on that. Speak on what you found in your life in terms of these other areas of inflammation besides food that have impacted you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, inflammation has so many. I mean, it's the root of all disease, and a lot of it is metabolic in nature, or at least that can be the trigger that kind of starts it. Once that fire started, there's so many other things. Stress is a huge one. A lot of people carry around a lot of anxiety and stress these days. Just the nature of the world that we're in, with social media and all these things that are constantly distracting and grabbing attention, and not as many people are spending as much time outdoors in nature, getting sunlight and being able to really enjoy that, or getting plenty of vitamin G, that gratitude vitamin that we all need so much, because without it, it's very hard to fall, to become negative or pessimistic, or kind of take the wrong approach. And that right there alone will feed inflammation in a huge way. Another one is we're surrounded with, like all these unnatural lights, especially blue lights from all these screens, from these smartphones, from a computer screen, from these television. And if you're staring straight into that, especially late in the evening, when normally, historically, it would have been getting dark, your body would have naturally started increasing melatonin production, which causes you to, relax and get tired and get drowsy, and your eyes get heavy and you go to bed. Well, when blue light unnaturally is hitting, and your brain is interpreting it's still daylight, like we don't need melatonin, and so circadian rhythms get thrown out of whack. And if you don't have a rhythm, if you don't have some sort of a consistent thing where you're pretty much trying to go to bed and get up at the same time most days, surely, there's going to be special occasions where you can't, but if you can get that consistency, you really do give your body the best chance to recover and detoxify, and you're going to wake up feeling optimal, I guess I should say. And when you do that, guess what? Inflammation, your immune system's going to be working optimally, and your inflammation is going to be in check. But yeah, there's so many different triggers these days. And then, especially these days, one thing that I, and I'm not just going to bash all of them, but nowadays this is kind of like the era of add more, instead of remove things. And so, like, if you've got a problem, they'll go, oh, let's not consider removing anything. Here's a supplement. Go take this supplement. It's the cure-all for everything. Go take this and you'll feel a million times better, when the problem may not be that you need to add anything. It may be that you need to remove or eliminate some of these things out of your presence. You know what I mean? And essentially that's going back to the carnivore diet. I didn't even realize that's what it was until it was happening to me, and I was doing it to eliminate all these bad foods. It's an elimination diet. That's why I worry. It's not that the meat or the eggs or the fish are magical. If that was the case, you could go to McDonald's right now and order a quarter pounder with fries and a shake, and that meat would do the works. That's not what it is. What it is giving your body a premium source of fuel. It's got plenty of protein and all your essential amino acids. It's got plenty of fat that is a very premium source of fuel. It can break down into ketones, triglycerides. It also contains both essential fatty acids, which your body can then use to produce all the other fatty acids that it's going to need, and no extra garbage. All the processed and ultra processed, all the seed oils, all the sugars and the grains and the preservatives and the additives and the coloring agents and all the things that are basically there to make the food look good, taste good, or last longer, on the shelf. Those are removed, and what happens is when you give your body a clean source of fuel, your body can then run optimally, and then it is the best medicine you could ever take. Your own body knows how to fix itself if given the chance and not inundated with these toxic things every single day. And so it's the removal of those bad things that allows the body to do it. It's not taking a supplement. It's not taking another pill. It's not eating something in addition to what you're already. It's actually removing that. And that's what's beautiful, is this diet is very simple. Now, I'm going to say it's not easy. I never said it was easy, but it is very simple. And, when I first started doing it, it's funny, the name of your podcast is Vitality Made Simple. Going back to when I was deciding to do this diet, I had to ask myself, like, what's the purpose? Why am I going to do this? Am I doing it to lose weight? Am I doing it for this, that, or the other? Because there's a million different reasons to do it. But for me, I just simply wanted to feel good again. It had been so long since I felt good. Like, that was worth more than anything to me. I just wanted to feel like I used to feel for 20 some odd years when I wasn't sick. And so I kind of came upon that term vitality way back then. And I was like, I just want vitality. And the funny thing is carnivore is a pretty simple diet. So for me, that's my vitality made simple.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you for that, Jason. Well, and for a pharmacist to say the answer is not in a pill, that's huge, folks, because I mean, you make your living selling pills. And but that's why your testimony is so powerful. Well, tell our listeners about your experience. You had this uh temporomandibular joint problem, this TMJ problem that, people move we naturally as humans move to lesser pain. So when something happens, we move away from pain, and sometimes that causes us to do things that later we, look back and go, "Oh, I shouldn't have moved away from that pain. I maybe should have confronted that pain."
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, back then I was just so naive and I wish I would, I wish I could go back then and know what I know now, but unfortunately back then I didn't. And so I was very trusting. I really thought that this problem was going to be solved. I did not know it was going to just continue. But yes, you're right. When I first started going to I should have jumped on as soon as the high tooth happened and they were kind of blew me off and said 3 days, I should have just gone, what, I'm going to go to another. Let's tackle this here and now, and I'll just go to another dentist and let them take a look at it. Because even when I went back and they did their adjustments or whatever, it still wasn't right. I knew something was still wrong, and I just was like, whatever. I didn't realize how big of a deal it could become. And then when I started going to the TMJ specialist, the first one I went to, unfortunately, was not very successful. We jumped straight to steroids. I'm talking Medrol injections straight into my face. Yeah, right into the TMJ joint. And yeah, they were effective because why wouldn't they be? But they didn't last, because we weren't getting to the root of the problem. We weren't finding the inflammation. And at that point, everything I was doing was inflammatory. And so it continued to get worse and worse until, when I actually moved away just by chance. I didn't. And when I did, he goes, "Oh, well, I'm glad you're moving back." I was moving back to Oklahoma, back here to Norman, where I live. And he goes, "Oh, I'm actually glad you're moving there. There's a really good TMJ specialist there I'm going to refer you to." And thank God. I mean, that was just by chance. I happened to move here. And yes, he was a whole different experience. This guy did not believe in steroids. It was more of a natural approach, more of an appliance approach. I had to wear a daytime and a nighttime appliance. Pretty inconvenient and uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie, because couldn't ever let my teeth touch, ever. He said, even when you brush your teeth, take the daytime appliance out, brush your teeth, hold your mouth open, put it back in. He said, when you're eating, eat with it in. You can't take it. So, I mean, it's kind of like, it reminds me of a football mouthpiece. Trying to eat food with a mouthpiece in your mouth, it's not very fun. It gets full of food, you got to rinse it out, put it back in. It doesn't taste pleasant, And I did that for probably about 2 years, and yeah, I mean, from there, just since the root cause wasn't really going away. Now, don't get me wrong, there was something about those appliances that slightly changed the structure of my face, which is the intent. And he told me from the beginning, he said, this could happen. He said, it's kind of what we're after. But one of the crazy, and I don't know if there's a correlation or what, but almost it did relieve that. And thank God, my TMJ is completely gone. I've never had another even small bout of it. And I am so eternally grateful for that, because at one point I couldn't even open my mouth. I couldn't even eat a banana. I couldn't even fit my finger between my teeth because it would lock on that TMJ. Super painful. You don't override that pain. You don't just power through it, and it affects every part of your day. And then sometimes it would open a little bit more, but when I would open my mouth, it would go like over to the because that hinge wasn't working properly, that TMJ joint, and so this side was working fine, this side wasn't, so it would and it'd go over to the side. I was very subconscious about that. It was very, every time I'm having a conversation, if I open my mouth too wide, my jaw is going over, to the side. And it affects you on every level, and I guess that's another thing that I realized when I was going through all that, is that health can be broken down into a bunch of different buckets. You got your physical health, but when that starts to really deteriorate and you can't get answers and you're trying everything, now it starts to affect your mental and your emotional health, and then when you're not able to sleep well, you're not able to recover, it starts to affect your relational health, which that's the biggest one. I mean, when it's affecting your relationship with all your friends, your family, your colleagues, your employees, your customers, everybody your fellow church members, whatever, everybody knows something's wrong, you know? It's not a fun feeling to know that it's slipping away and there's nothing you can do. And it just feels like a vicious, just like a dark spiral that's going down.
Mhm.
And it's really, it's I'll be honest with you, that's why I call it my rock bottom. That was the deepest, darkest period of my life. I was very hopeless. It was very hard to be optimistic when you get pounded day after day, year after year, you know. And every single thing you try, early on, you're optimistic and you're hopeful, but after dozens or hundreds of different things and it just still won't go away, it takes a lot to muster any of that up because you're beat down, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. And I know that's where people are. And so essentially what I'm trying to say is, you know, for me, I tried so many different things, so many different therapies, so many medications, supplements, diets, all this stuff. But to me, it's almost like I was confronted with like multiple, you know, you got all these different options. You can do whatever you want. And it's like, okay, here's door number 1. Let's go through here. Okay, maybe it's, and then you go through there and you're like, whoa, no, that's bad. Okay, let me try door number 2. And you're optimistic every time you go through these, but after you get to door 3, you know, you've gone through 372 doors. It's kind of hard not to be skeptical when you're about to go through door 373, you know, and that's how it was and you don't know. I mean, in my case, I had no idea carnivore was going to provide me with that. And that was door 373 for me. You know, you don't know what the answer is going to be. And then it worked. And so for me, if I can help someone else that has if they can resonate or relate to the story I just told about my health, and they don't know which door they're on, if I can save them the time, it'd be like, try door 373 first. I don't know if it's going to work for you. I don't know. You know, it may or it may not. I'm not guaranteeing anything. But if I would have known about door 373 10 years ago, that would have saved me a lot of trouble. And that's essentially what I'm doing these days. And I've had the you know, being in my setting, I recognize patients that are either on the same medications I was on, or I just get to know them and I can kind of tell their story. And so I've shared my story with a few dozen, and it has been massively, massively helpful in quite a few patients at this point. So that's why I know the value of it, not only for myself, but I've seen it happen hundreds of more times between just personal things and then some of the people that I've met online and stuff. So yeah, it's truly amazing.
But now you feel better, Jason. So now you're looking for other hidden areas of inflammation. You'd had this root canal, that tooth that was so painful.
Yes.
Tell our listeners about your experience, you know, with what I call the forgotten orifice, the mouth, that gets so, you know, relegated to somewhere else that it, you know, we too often think the mouth doesn't impact everything else. So give us your take on that.
Yes. So after I kind of had a bad history with dentists, and so I'm not gonna lie, I kind of avoided because I ended up with PMJ after that one. About 8 years later, I finally was like, you know what, I probably need to go get a teeth cleaning done. So I go back to a new dentist to get the teeth cleaning, and while we're in there, he goes, "Hey, you got a cavity back in one of your back molars that is starting to decay." He said, "It could go out tomorrow. It might be a year or two." He said, "But it's not going to last." And I said, "Okay, well, what do you suggest?" He goes, "I can fix it today. Got no appointments right now. I can put you a new filling in there right now." I said, "Okay, I'm already here. Let's get after it. Go for it." So he does. He removes it, and then he goes, "Oh," and I'm like, "Oh, what?" And he goes, "It's way worse under there than I thought. Like there's way more decay under that filling than I thought there was, and you need a root canal." And I'm like, "Okay, so what are we gonna do?" And he goes, "Well, actually, I still don't have any appointment. I'm wide open today. I can do it right now." And I'm like, "You can do it right now?" And he said, "Yeah, we can make the crown. We can do the whole thing. You'll be out of here in 3 or 4 hours." I said, "Okay, I didn't plan on doing this, but we're already halfway there. Let's go," you know? And so, and I was already numbed up and everything. So he does the root canal. And I go home and I'm very numb, you know, for quite a while. Well, anyway, when it wears off, I'm in intense pain. I mean, something clearly, and dental pain is crazy, you know, like you it's a whole different type of pain.
No.
Well, he's already closed for the day. So I'm like, and I mean, it was sensitive to, even when I just took a breath, the air that would hit it would just make it go crazy. Cold, hot, everything. Where I was eating or drinking or whatever. So I called him in the morning. I was like, hey, I don't know what's going on with this tooth. I went in there with no pain and I left with massive pain. We got to do something, you know. So I go back in, he rescans it, does x-rays and all this stuff. And he goes, I don't see the problem. He said, but we'll redo it. I said, okay. So he redoes the whole root canal again, takes the crown off, whole root canal, makes a new crown. And I'm in there for quite a while again, sends me back home. This time it wears off and there's still pain, but it's not as severe. You know, this, instead of being like a 10 of 10, this was probably like a 3 or 4. And again, to your note, I should have went back and demanded to be pain-free and probably taken care of this thing, but I'm just like, well, I guess I can live with it. So I lived with it, and probably about 6 months later, I'm at work, you know, working the bench as a pharmacist, and all of a sudden my pain goes just through the roof on that same tooth. And I'm sweating. It's hurting so bad. I can't think, there ain't no way I'm going to eat. There ain't no way, I'm going to do nothing. Because I called him. I said, hey, y'all got to send me something in. I'm dying and you have to get me in. Like, this is an emergency. You got to get me in 6 o'clock in the morning, whatever. And they go, okay, we'll get you in first thing in the morning and we'll send in something. They sent in a Medrol dose pack. And so I'm like, I don't think this is going to touch this pain, but I'll try it. So I took it. Barely took a little bit of the edge off. Anyway, I get home that evening. They're already closed for the day. My pain is on a level I've never even comprehended.
Which is a big deal for you, Jason, because you've lived with all this pain.
Exactly.
Then,
oh, yeah.
pain is not new to you.
No, it's not. But this was different because that nerve, that dental pain, you know, it felt like I'd been shot in the face, literally, like right there in my jaw. I'm sitting here, I'm sweating. I'm trying to, you know, put ice on it. I'm taking Tylenol, ibuprofen. I'm doing everything I can. There's no way I'm eating dinner. Comes time to go to bed, ain't no way I'm going. My adrenaline, everything, my heart's pounding, I'm dying. And so I go sit in my recliner trying to just rest. And I had an appointment at it was either 6 or 7 in the morning. And I can't fall asleep. And it's 11, and it's 12, 1, 2, 3 a.m. I finally doze off at 4:30 or 5 a.m. Not sure how I did that, but I finally did. And when I woke up, my alarm went off because I had to go to the dentist just like an hour later. I woke up and I noticed the pain's gone. That's weird. And then I reached up and I felt my face, and I've got just like this huge bulge coming down off the side of my face. I walk in the mirror and I look, and I mean, boom, huge. And it was an abscess. It had blown basically the tip off of that root downward. And so I'm fuming because now I know for a fact there was a massive infection. That's why all the pain was in there. And so I was Googling, doing all the research I could. And that's when I came across an endodontist. I didn't even know what it was until that. And I went in there, I said, listen, you got to refer me to an endodontist. And he goes, I already have. You got an appointment in 30 minutes. Go. So I was like, okay. So I go up there. Well, anyway, he's like, oh yeah, you got to, it's a bad infection. We're going to have to lance it. We're going to have to give you some antibiotics. And then after we get that infection to go away, he was like, I'll repair it. But when he looked at it on an x-ray, it showed that of the 4 roots that were coming off of that molar, one of them had a little dog leg that went off. And that's why the dentist was missing that spot. That was the problem the whole time. The tip of the root was going off to an angle. And apparently a regular dentist is not good about getting those unless they go straight down like they're supposed to. And he goes, you know, we got a couple options. He's like, I can either drill through the crown and repair it, which he said, you know, we got a good chance of that working. I can't guarantee it. He said, or, you know, we could do an incision below and essentially put almost like a crown on the bottom of it. And I said, let's just, you know, whatever you, and he goes, I think we can just drill through it. And so he drilled through it, fixed it. I thought we were good to go. And, you know, and it did help massively. Yeah, the pain was gone. The obviously the abscess was gone. And then that's whenever I got curious, and, because I still had, you know, I knew that something, even though carnivore helped with my inflammation in a huge, huge way, I still knew something's driving this inflammation. And that's when I started, you know, looking into some more research. And that's when I found you. And you taught me so much, honestly, about, because I had never put 2 and 2 together on that. You know, I knew that the gut was huge. I knew that's why, you know, the metabolic problems and the dietary things were huge. I never thought about the mouth being part of the gut or having a microbiome of its own, you know? And so whenever I came in and we did the cone beam x-ray and we go look at this exact same tooth that has been like that for, 7 or 8 years, shed so much light on that. Not only that, did the oral microbiome saliva test to show some of these bugs like Fusobacterium and a few others were there. And not only were they there when we did the GI map of my gut, since every time I swallow anything, it's going straight there, they're also there. Well, that really connected the dots for me. And I'm like, I never even thought about it being, I never even thought about that. That may be what's majorly driving inflammation in my body. And so whenever you told me, hey, I mean, look at this, you showed me, I saw it. You could see where the bad root canal was. You circled it on there and said, there's a hidden infection. It's sitting right there in plain sight. And I'm convinced if I would have gone to 99 other dentists that weren't looking at doing it through the angle that you look, I don't think that they would have seen it. I don't think they would have ever told me there's anything wrong with that tooth, that we need to get it out. We need to get out of your head. It's not doing any good. And in fact, these problematic bacteria are linked to a plethora of long-term bad outcomes. So,
But Jason, you were curious. You were a willing learner. You were an open receptor. Your mental terrain wants to learn, and I so appreciate that because it's hard to tell somebody, okay, you've spent all this money on this tooth, you've had all this time, it feels okay now, but wait, there's more. And but being a pharmacist, you have this scientific brain, so you understood, okay, these bacteria, they start in the mouth, but they don't stay in the mouth. And kind of like a dead tooth, a root canal tooth is a tooth on probation, I say. It's a taxidermied body part. So kind of like in the garden where the weak plant is where all the bugs hang out and it gets weaker and weaker. That's sort of how a root canal tooth can be. Every root canal is not bad, but your immune system, when you've got a root canal that's got that hidden silent infection, it doesn't really hurt, but it's getting into your bloodstream, getting to your blood-brain barrier, affecting your gut, sequestering your immunity. I mean, your immune cells were having to go there to keep it from hurting. So I just really applaud you for thinking through it, and we just had such a vibrant discussion over all of that because you're a learner.
well, yeah, I mean, you're right. And I can't say that I was always that way. It's because of, what I went through, and I'm continually seeking answers now. Once you experience your health hit rock bottom, and then you get to climb back out of that hole and you kind of get a second lease on life, you realize you're kind of in control of certain aspects. You're not in control of everything, obviously, but what your outputs are going to be equal to the quality of your inputs. And, so that has to do with what you're putting in your mouth, what you're listening to, your relationships, what you do in your spare time, what's going in through your eyes, all that and you can essentially live an optimal lifestyle. Well, I'm always trying to make it better. And again, like I said, if I try to bring back some of these problematic foods that would be considered healthy to most, they're not to me. I have to ask, is there anything else I can do? And that's whenever, I thought, I've had all these dental problems. Every time I go, I've either end up with TMJ or end up having to do a root canal that blows up or what, there's got to be a connection here with the mouth. And that's what made me seek you out. So you're right. I was looking, but honestly, I didn't expect it to be, you shed way more light on this than I thought I was going to find out. And it's huge because I think, to your point, I've heard you say that it's basically a hidden epidemic in America these days. There's a lot of people that it could be the sole cause. It could literally be the main driver of their chronic inflammation, and they have no idea. They are taking all these pills, they're doing all these things, and it could go 12 years back when they got a root canal done that they thought was fine, and it ain't fine. It's in there, like it's tapped right into their bloodstream, just dumping, inflammation straight in.
Or they have gum disease, low level even gum disease. I even in my functional medicine classes, Jason, when they show gum disease, they show like, Billy Bob teeth. They show this, teeth that are all crawling over each other. They don't show what I see every day, and that's even moderate gum disease. Just a little bit is still a big deal for the body. So,
Yes.
thanks for that affirmation. Now, there's other things I'm sure you're doing for your health. So, I know you work out. You're really strong. Tell our listeners about just some of the adjunctive, we might say, lifestyle strategies that you practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it stems back to I'm motivated to do it because at one point it was taken away from me. I wasn't able to enjoy it, or if I did it, it was painful, and I kind of paid the price. But yes, I'm very. I try to have, like I've already said before, I try to optimize my circadian rhythm. I try to get to bed and wake up at the same time every day. And I'm kind of an early bird now. I didn't used to be, but I really do enjoy in the that quiet time in the morning that I can kind of spend with myself. I can read a good book. I can spend some of my time some of my closest time in my faith is when I'm by myself. You know what I mean?
Oh.
I can close my eyes. I can drink a cup of coffee. I can get caught up on some stuff. I do like to take a walk almost every day if possible, especially outside if weather permitting, because there's just something about nature. I don't know how to put my finger on it, but when you do that, and I know that just from my days being a country boy, hunting and fishing, and there's something just like a psychological reset when you go spend some time out there. I like
It literally lowers cortisol. Trees
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Right.
hormones that lower cortisol. I mean, it's just so cool how God designed it.
Yep. Yeah. These days, I'm very selective about who I surround myself with because again, they say you're the average of the 5 people, you surround yourself with. So I'll try to surround myself with people I want to be more like, if they're optimistic or they're generous or they're kind or they've done something or whatever. I'd rather do that than surround myself with people who are constantly going to be negative Nancy or have the glass half empty, mindset. Because if you do that, you may not realize it, but it definitely does have an impact on you, especially if it becomes a daily practice and it becomes a habit. Essentially, what I realized is the quality of your thoughts determine who you are, your character, your destiny, what you achieve is largely dependent on it. All starts here, no matter if it's starting a new business or writing a book or starting a podcast or whatever it may be. It all started here. It all started right here as a thought. And so I do that. I try to spend as much quality time with my kids. Of course, they're boys, so they love sports. They love games. And so to me, a good philosophy, and I like to keep the balance here, is work hard, play hard. If you only work, it'll end in disaster because you're going to burn out. You're gonna get tired, whatever. And if you only play, well, you don't get any work done. Nothing good happens. So, but if you can strike a good balance between plenty of work, work hard and play hard, you can really, life can be pretty magical. And I think you can really appreciate it and be grateful for everything. And the other thing is, and I haven't always had this, I'm now in my 40s. And so this is kind of a newer revelation for me, but it's just that every day we wake up, just naturally, you're going to have good days, bad days, and then everything in between. I appreciate all of those days. Even on the bad days, I appreciate those because without those, the good days they wouldn't be as good as they are. If every day was a good day, then that would just be boring. Every day you just expected everything to be hunky-dory and go perfectly. How fun is that? It wouldn't even feel good. It would feel just normal, So I appreciate that. And then, I can always compare my worst day now with what I was going through when my health was just gone. And oh my, it's a million times better even on my very worst day now. So I'm kind of at an advantage, I guess I should say, to be more grateful, for even the worst day that I could go through. And so that's kind of, I try to keep that, that system going, and then to be consistent, because when you got that consistency, you give yourself the best probability, the best odds to live the best life.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I think without knowing it, you probably harness a lot of the benefits of humor because, for our listeners, Jason is hilarious. And that's a big deal to have a belly laugh. It's really been shown to be so immune building. So, that's one of your strategies that's probably just comes naturally for you. But
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing I like more, and any of my close friends know that. I don't hold back. I'm pretty. I love. There's nothing I love more than a good laugh, and I jab them, and we'll basically talk crap to each other, but it's funny. You know what I mean? I'd rather do that and enjoy it and just try to make the most of it, because what's the point in walking around just like a stick in the mud, all
well,
day?
well, I have one lingering question, Jason,
Sure.
and that's these neck vertebrae.
Yeah.
How did that story all go?
I'm glad you asked, and I've gotten that question several times. And the funny thing is it was probably it was close to right when I was about to fire my rheumatologist, and I go in there and I'm feeling good. I mean, and she even noted, she's like, you look like you're doing great. Like, any complaints? And I'm like, nothing. I just wanted her to do my lab work and make sure everything still looked good, And she goes, I'm looking back here. And this was a different rheumatologist at this point. It wasn't the same one that I was going to when all that went down. And she goes, I'm looking here and I see that you had some pretty serious neck stuff going on, some cervical stuff going on here. She goes, whatever happened with that? And I'm like, the pain's gone. I don't care. I'm at one point, my neck was so painful and stiff, I couldn't even turn my head. If you were standing to my right and said my name, I had to turn at the waist to look at you. If I'm sitting in my car to back out of the driveway, I couldn't turn to look. When I'm like I said, I'm a hunter. If I'm deer hunting and I'm up, in my stand and I hear behind me, I couldn't turn my head. I had to stand up, turn all the way around, to try to see it. So bad, And so, me being able to be pain-free and my neck and everything moves great, I don't care what the scan says. I feel good. My vitality is back. That's all I wanted. She goes, well, I want to do some scans. And I'm like, why? She goes, I just want to see, because this was pretty serious. I said, okay, I've got no objection. Let's go. So we did it. And this had probably been a good 2 years had passed since I had went carnivore. And anyway, we get these results back and I check them. And I'm just reading straight from the radiology report because I got a portal message that it was there. And when I pull it up, it said normal anatomical function, no problem at all. I mean, like it had grown back, apparently. I mean, now this radiologist, I don't know if he even knew that I had anything going on before. But when I read that report, I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Because when I had gone to that neurologist and he said, listen, the weird thing about your this erosion at C1 and C2, he says, normally the body does the opposite of what yours is doing. He said, normally when you get all this inflammation, the body will naturally try to fuse those joints together, especially in ankylosing spondylitis. And go Google ankylosing spondylitis and look at the spine of someone in end stage. The whole spine is completely fused. Like, it's just like a rigid candy cane looking thing, and that's why it's such a terrible disease. If you fell over at that point, it would just shatter. It'd be like dropping a candy cane to the floor and it would just shatter. That's the same thing that would happen to your spine. And so he said, especially with your diagnosis, you should be doing the opposite. And he goes, we're going to watch it. And he said, I think that it should try to fuse on its own. So then when I go back and it's not only not fused, but it's back to normal function, I'm like, are you kidding me? No medication, no supplement, none of that. All I did was change my diet in a very big way. But I went on an elimination diet and I allowed my body to do what it does. It grew the joints back, and that's why it's pain-free. I mean, I've got full range of motion, everything, and for years I did not. So, yeah, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked that.
Well, thank you. And it just shows how our bodies are designed to heal.
Yep.
And if our listeners are left with one big thing, nothing tastes better than good health is your Jasonism. And then also our bodies are designed to heal. And even when the doctors tell you, oh, this is just going to get worse, it's a genetic thing, nothing you can do, take this medicine, you're going to get progressively worse. Don't believe them. I mean, look in the mirror and speak words of truth. I'm designed in the image of God. My body is designed to heal. I'm going to, with God's help, figure out what to do to speed this process along. And that's exactly what you've done, Jason Barrett.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because, I've been a pharmacist for 16 years now, and my outlook and opinion on it has changed quite a bit, not only just from being a pharmacist, but probably all the exclamation points come from when I became the sick patient and this modern medicine did not help, Now, let me make a distinction here. When it comes to acute therapy, like say you break your leg or you a gunshot wound or you get in a car wreck or something, and you go to like a trauma center or something like that, they're very good. Okay, that is we are top of the line. But when it becomes something chronic, when it becomes something, especially if it gets autoimmune thrown at it, all of a sudden it just goes into a bucket where they go, oh, you have zero chance of ever. This is not going to go away. You're going to have to take a pill for the rest of your life. You're going to have to see me for the rest of your life. And so essentially, after a few years, I was looking at, and then not only that, I've got these, I've got these patients coming in. Well, the whole reason I think most healthcare providers decide to become healthcare providers is because they want to help sick people get better. I don't think they go. That's the main reason for most of us. And so I got out thinking that's what I was going to do, and that's not what's happening. These people are coming, and they ain't getting better. In fact, they're probably getting more side effects or new symptoms, and now they need even more medications, and they're complaining that they have to go to 3 different doctors and come see me twice a week at the pharmacy. And so after a few years, I'm kind of like, man, the system's broken, And then after I opened my own pharmacy and I got to see even deeper behind it, and I got to see, from an ownership and an operational perspective, kind of, the way the insurance works and some of the payment systems and the way that they are, I realized it's not broken. This is actually working exactly the way it was designed to.
Yeah.
Somebody's benefiting from this current model, and you have to step back and go, what's more profitable to big pharma and big insurance? And when I say big pharma and big insurance, I'm not talking about individual pharmacists or practitioners or pharmacies or clinics. I'm talking about the big ones, like the multi-billion, trillion-dollar pharmaceutical company giants and big insurance, which dictates everything. They tell you which doctor you can go to, what tests he can run, what drugs he can prescribe, which pharmacy you can go to. And they're controlling a whole lot more behind the scenes, as you know, in the dentistry world.
Yeah.
Well, basically, when you look at it from their perspective, what's the most profitable business model here? And I'll tell you, there's 2 distinct patients that are not profitable to them. They have no interest in. One is healthy people. If you're healthy and you don't have any problems, you're not going to go to the doctor. You don't need any medications, and they're not making any money on you. The other is dead patients. They're not making any money if you get so sick that you die. But if you can be in the Goldilocks zone right in the middle where you get sick enough to have to go to the doctor and get diagnosed with something where they're going to only treat the symptom and not the root cause. They're going to let the root cause fester in the background, and they're going to throw a pill at you, which may help with the symptom, but it's going to completely ignore the root cause. Also, it comes with side effects. Also, it could cause, depletions or deficiencies down the road, which then manifest as new symptoms. And then they're like, oh, you got a new symptom? You got a new side effect? Oh, don't worry. We've got another pill for that. And before you know it, that one patient that just started coming to see you for one medication, fast forward 3 years, they're on a half a dozen or more. And they're not feeling better. They're not happy about it. They're doing every single thing that their doctor is telling them to do, and they are not getting better. There's nothing more frustrating as a pharmacist that is trying to help sick people get better than to watch people basically get stuck in this spider web. They walk in and they get one medication, and before you know it, they can't get out. And then eventually it'll just continue to to get worse until maybe they do get a worse diagnosis where it's, a chronic condition or an autoimmune thing, or it could be cancer or whatever it may be. And there's one other group that's in there with big pharma and big insurance that's part of this vicious trio, I call them, and that's big food. And especially in America, these foods that are in America are so toxic. Most of the foods, especially fast foods. If you go to a supermarket or grocery store, if you're leaving the perimeter of the store where you have single ingredient whole food options that what is in there, and you can add seasonings or whatever that you want, but at least you know what's in there. If you get out of the perimeter and you get on the inside of those aisles, oh my goodness, you turn that around, there's 17 ingredients in something that should have 1 or 2. And all of those things are in there to either make it look prettier, taste better, so you get a bigger dopamine hit when you eat it, extend the shelf life to increase their profitability. And so they're very addictive. You go home, you eat them, they taste amazing. I'll be the first one to say they taste amazing. They make you feel good. You get that dopamine hit. They're addictive in nature. And so essentially they get you addicted to these foods that are seemingly harmless. And over time, it's just like taking a little bit of poison every day. It's cumulative. And so after 100 days, 500 days, 1,000 days, maybe a decade, who knows how long it's going to take? Boom, they manifest in some metabolic problem. And that could be anything from chronic inflammation. It could be a gut disease. It could be diabetes. We know that is definitely metabolic in nature. There's so many different problems that all stem from that. Well, big food, they got you addicted, so they've got you on a subscription. Now you're sick, so you have to go to the doctor. So big insurance has you on a subscription, and then you've got to go to the pharmacy to get all these medications. So big pharma has you, and you are on a subscription you did not want, and it's a lifetime subscription that you can't get rid of. It's massively profitable, and it's disturbing. But it was designed that way. I mean, I've seen it first.
No, it definitely was designed that way. But Jason, you're giving people hope, and hope in and of itself is a nutrient. Maybe we should call that vitamin H. You know, because it really is. I mean, I just see people light up when they have a little bit of hope that they can get out of that vortex you're describing. You have to think of those 3 circles you mentioned, and as they come together in your life, that overlap gets bigger, and that's where you're sick. And so you have to pull those apart. You have to say no to the food. I jokingly say that the nutrition label is really a warning label. I mean, it really is. If you see a nutrition label on food, it's a warning label. You're not going to find a nutrition label on, a big roast or a package of steak or even an apple or a banana. No. So it's really a warning label, but I really thank you for the hope you've instilled today, because that is huge, and it's what every single listener needs, regardless of what they're facing, regardless of the relationships in their life, of who they love. We all know people who are not living with vitality, and I thank you for this. Now, I want you to tell our listeners about your podcast and where they can find you.
Yes, absolutely. So, I just recently started a podcast. I've got 7 episodes out. I'll have the 8th one out this week. And it is called Meet the Truth, and that is spelled MEAT, the truth. You can find me on basically all the socials at this point at carnivore-style, and that's spelled CARNIVRX. Like a nuts on. Do what?
Like a pharmacist. I think
exactly.
That's over name.
Yes, and that's going to be on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all the socials. And then if you want to get in contact with me, the easiest way is going to be through email, and that's just going to be carnivore-style, spelled the same way, at gmail.com. I'm putting the final touches on a website, which will just be www.carnivore-style.com. It's not out quite yet because I've just gotten started here a little over a month ago, but it's coming. And so I invite you to check it out. And I mean, one other thing I wanted to touch on, because you were just talking about that, is on the whole, like it's almost like a sign, whenever something's happening. Well, for me, this is what I want your listeners to hear is when your body has a symptom, instead of it being something's wrong with my body and I need to go to the doctor and I need to get on a medication immediately, it's what it is. It's a signal. It's your body saying something's wrong. It's like the check engine light coming on in your car. If the check engine light came on in your car and you went down to the mechanic or you took it down to the shop and he goes, oh, well, it's actually not fixable. It's what we're gonna have to do is I'm gonna sell you this bottle of additive and you're gonna have to add it to the gas tank every time you fill up and every time you run out. You're gonna have to come back and you have to buy it from me. And what it'll do is it's gonna make the check engine light go off. It'll go, but as soon as you stop putting it in there, the check engine light's gonna come back on. You would be like, "You're crazy. What are you talking about? That makes no sense at all." And so for me, it's like when your body has a symptom, it is a red flag. It is a signal your body is trying to tell you something's wrong. And I'll just encourage people, if you're going to the doctor and they are not trying to figure out what the cause of the problem was, and all we're doing is symptom or disease management, as they call it, and allowing it to continue, keep looking. A good place to start would be in integrative or functional medicine, because
Yeah.
these people who are doing this, they're still DOs and MDs and pharmacists and all kind, and dentists and all kinds of healthcare. It's beyond the degree, so they understand the same. They got the same schooling as everybody else, but they've looked further to where they can look at the entire picture and find the root cause. And I'm telling you, there's so much power in that. And in a lot of cases, like I said, sometimes it's so simple that it's just the removal of something. They're not trying to add a subscription. They're trying to remove one. And so that should be good news to a lot of listeners.
It's totally good news, Jason. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It's wonderful to know you. I mean, you just light up wherever you are, and I know you've lit up the airways for lots of people listening right now. And to listeners, thank you for joining us for Vitality Made Simple. I think we're in 165 countries now, and I don't know, 6,100 cities, but that's because you're sharing. Please subscribe. Please just let somebody know there is hope. This is a podcast about vitamin H. We're gonna coin that term, Jason. And I hope you all just have a great day. Enjoy Vitality, and may God bless you richly. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us on Vitality Made Simple podcast. Be sure to visit drdebbieosment.com for our courses and resources designed to help you feel better, look better, and enjoy better relationships. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for joining us.